Good evening, all. I'm Dustin, also known as Rope Aficionado, and welcome to the Dominance Dialogues. This is the podcast where we explore the psychology, the sociology, and the cultural aspects of BDSM subculture. And in tonight's episodes, Power and Pain, navigating the highs and the lows of authority dynamics, we bring on Lee Harrington. Thank you for joining us tonight, Lee. Do you mind
Yes,
introducing yourself and a little bit about your experience?
absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Lee Harrington. I'm a sexuality and spirituality educator based off of the unceded land of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho people that is also known as Denver, Colorado. And I have had the chance to be part of kink and sexuality communities for, gosh, 96. So whatever that makes it now, 28 years. Time is really interesting sometimes. But along the path, I've had a chance to write an array of books from Shibari You Can Use to Sacred Kink, The Eightfold Paths of BDSM and Beyond, or also Playing Well with Others, Your Field Guide to Discovering, Exploring, and Navigating BDSM, Kink, and Leather Communities that I got to co-pen with Melina Williams. And I feel so tickled that not only is this my full-time life, and how I navigate my personal relationships. Exploring these topics is also how I get to connect with people around the world. And I'm glad I get to continue doing so here tonight.
That's interesting to say. So, slightly off topic, we were off the air talking a little bit about content creation, for lack of better terminology.
Mm,
And one of the big things for me, the value I get is that connection with, like you said,
yes.
people around the world.
Hmm.
I mean, we've gotten to connect because of us both being in this community at very different sides of the country.
Yeah,
Hmm. And
absolutely. And I think what's powerful about that is this notion that, I mean, for me, it's broken me out of a story that I could have developed otherwise. And I've see come from some people that there is a one way we do these things, or this is how your locals do it. So therefore, this is how it exists. And getting to travel internationally and speak with folks online and whether it's through social media platforms or through getting to teach online, getting exposed to constructs of how we
mm,
even examine these things is is so important to me. And one of the things I've really come to pay attention to is that as an American author, that a lot of American English speaking folks online and in the written world have accidentally ended up colonizing stories of what kink and power exchange, quote, should look like compared
mm,
to, because when I've traveled places and people are like, well, I don't know if I'm a top or a bottom. And I'm like, you do know that that's English language descriptions of things compared to, say, when I was in Portugal. In the gay men's world, there's the notion of, are you a top, i.e., the fucker? Are you the bottom, the person who is fucked? And when I was in Portugal, the language was activo, passivo, e creativo. And so creativo would be the notion that my sexuality is not constrained by the bounds of being active or passive. My desires are more creative and outside of such lines compared to the idea of being versatile in English. Right. And that even those little things of how we talk about sexuality, if I hadn't had exposures to other places around the world, I would be stuck in this story of, oh, clearly there's dominant and submissive, right? There's top and there's bottom. And so the idea of talking about our pains and our pleasures coming out of power exchange and authority transfer and whatever other words we're describing it with today, I find myself so blessed having gotten the chance to do, quote, content creation.
mm. Ooh, that's powerful. I've, I'm coming into being, well, creating this, I'm stumbling on words, I've been creating content for about 5 years, presenting for almost 10. I've kind of stepped away from presenting. I'm now almost a year into the podcast. Actually, in just a few days, I will be a year into the podcast. I've been part of, let me back up. I've been a BDSM practitioner for about 20 years. I've been fortunate enough even before to see different walks, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
The last year has been profound for
Mm-hmm.
me. And I haven't been attending presentations or classes, not because of lack of desire, but partly because of lack of prioritization, right? And to be honest, I don't want to learn how to swing a flogger. I want to learn why we swing it. All these things, the conversations we have. And I get so much out of these conversations to hear different people's thoughts from around the world when it comes to authority dynamics, to various aspects of intentional relationships. It's caused me to look in the mirror and reflect on my ideas of what an authority dynamic is. And I think that's the perfect segue into my first official question for the conversation. Because as much as I want to chit chat, we have a lot of conversation, right? And all of this was of value, in my opinion, to be clear. But my first question is, Lee, how do you define authority dynamics within inside of a BDSM relationship?
It's interesting that you use the word authority dynamics specifically, because a lot of people lead with the notion of power exchange, and I believe that everybody exchanges power with everybody on this planet. Like, I think there's complexities of how we're all wired and how it interlaces with each other. But authority dynamics, I would consider that, gosh, the idea that in any given pair or group of interpersonal dynamics, right? Let's set that one first. There's been an acknowledgement of where authority exists in an individual or group of individuals' lives, and then consciously handed over to one or another parts of those authority roles or structures.
That is a pretty academic response in my head.
It is a very academic response. I am a nerd.
I appreciate it. Can I get a little more fluff for the audience?
Yeah. Let's say in an imaginary world, we have two individuals who are drawn to each other for some reason or another. I'm not going to say why. People drawn to people. And they look at each other and go, you know what? We would thrive if we were unequal in some way, but that we were equitable at the end of the day. That we don't want to have the exact same role. We don't want to do the exact same thing. We don't want to receive the exact same thing. But by not being the same, we will succeed. Is that a little fluffier? Closer?
Thank you. Oh man, no, I love that. Both I loved, right? The second one, it painted an image. And I liked your phrasing, specifically that while the people may not be equal, they still share equity, right? They're still
Right.
equitable.
Everybody is. I'm a big believer that there is a power that happens when everyone thinks they win at the end of a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's looking at conscious authority dynamics that are consensual, is that we're all winning at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's
Well,
different than when it's not desired or not chosen, where there's an authority dynamic that's present between me and the government. I do not necessarily think I'm winning at the end of the day in some of those days, in some of those dynamics,
yeah.
compared to when I'm like, oh, my boy and I, when we navigate things together, they feel like they're winning as my boy, and I feel like I am winning as their daddy.
Right. Just to play devil's advocate, what about consensual authority dynamics that are not focused on winning?
So,
Not, I mean, in my
winning,
opinion, not all authority dynamics are focused on winning or growth, so to say, or value for value inherently.
can you give me an example of where that exists?
I believe in the BDSM world.
Can
I
you give me
think
an
that
can you give me a picture?
I don't want to, I'm trying to think of ways to describe it without being too personal because it's not my personal flavor of dynamic, but
Well,
in my
I'll
world,
give you an example of what people describe that way that I actually disagree with as being that. So, an
okay,
example that I've had people say when they're referring to that is, oh, well, one person is in service and the other person doesn't have to give anything back. I
bullshit.
consider I consider that an opportunity for winning because the
Mm,
service-oriented person is having a chance to fulfill their dharma, right? To fulfill their path in life. And
mm.
they're not having the winning come from the person they're in service to. They're having winning come through following their authentic journey.
A- Absolutely, right? But I guess what I said bullshit to was I don't think that a dominant just sits on his butt and does nothing, right? There is effort from being on the top. Some more than others.
So Raven Caldera described to me once this idea that in his boy serving him, he had a better way to be able to serve the universe as a spirit worker and as a priest.
Mm,
And so, even if he wasn't giving back to that individual, that relationship has since changed its shape. This story and statement is based off of a conversation 15 years ago. But at that time, it was a boy gives to him, he gives to universe. What the
mm,
boy got out of it was knowing that the universe and the community are served.
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
Raven wasn't giving anything directly back to him.
Yeah, yeah.
Raven was giving out. And I think that's one of the things that exists in these structures of relationship. If we're even like, because if it's a pair of people, one's going one direction, one's going the, you're a double A battery, I'm a double A battery. Our positives and negatives are pointed in opposite direction. Yay, right? That's a very easy shape of machine to imagine our batteries plugging into.
Mm,
But there are ones that are, quote, differently shaped. And I think
mm-hmm.
it's valuable to honor in authority dynamics that there's lots of different shapes out there. I was given this example recently I was doing a conscious inequality class in San Francisco for the folks at uh, whatever the group is. My brain's not pulling it up right now. I can imagine their logo, but that's not helpful. Foundations in San Francisco. And I was talking about the idea that one person might be a double A battery and the other person is a D cell, right?
Mm.
What kind of machine does that works that with those two battery shapes?
None that I know of. They're different voltages.
Teddy Ruxpin. Do you remember the
Really?
Teddy Ruxpin
I do
doll?
remember.
Yeah, requires two completely different shapes of batteries to make the same weird doll talk to you and move. Because one battery operated the actual mechanics of the doll and the other one played the music.
Okay, so the bigger baddie moved the mechanics, and okay,
And then
fair.
the double A's played, or triple A's, whichever one they were, played the music. played the little, cassette player. But what's cool about that to me is, let's say you are in a polyamorous relationship or a multi-partner dynamic. One of you is a D cell, two of you are double A's, and somebody says to you, well, you can't put those all in the same machine. It doesn't work like that.